Science fiction, the great teacher, the great inspiration. It helps us see the endless possibilities of life. So let's be inspired together.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We are not sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Hello everybody, it's the Commodore. Well, hope everybody's doing okay. This video here, I'm going to talk about the pilot episode of Strange New Worlds, and in the second part, I'm going to talk about the last episode of Season 2, Star Trek Picard. So, let's get on the way here. Review, feedback on Strange New Worlds. I was actually, kind of pleased at the way they did the pilot for Strange New Worlds. I think it really felt more Star Trek in its approach to a story, than what we've seen, for a long time, since But yeah, I like the way they kind of. They didn't get bogged down in like everybody's little stories and stuff like that. They just introduced characters in there. They just said a little bit, and we moved on. Certainly, with a series, you can always pick up more stuff in detail along the way, like every TV show does, right? That I've seen. They don't give every, say everything about a character in a whole show. You learn about the character as the TV show progresses. So, yeah, I was kind of glad that they dialed that back considerably. Like I said, in a series, you just don't have that luxury. You have to stick to the main story as much as you can, and just introduce the characters in a pilot as they're needed. You can always learn about them in other episodes later. This episode here, this pilot episode felt, when they went to the world to try to stop what they were going to do. That was a good scene set up there for sort of a Star Trek philosophical message to not just the fictitious characters on the screen, but to everybody at home as well, because we're all going through this thing with Russia here. And Ukraine could be a international flashpoint for World War III here. And, I think the message that, the Captain Pike there was trying to convey was resonant even for our time. And that's the kind of thing that I like to see, is I like to see stories that talk to us, as we are today, not just to discuss what's going to happen in the future of Star Trek. I want to see what's going to happen, talk to the real people, because lately, it feels like the stories, only pertain to what's happening on the TV screen, and really don't have much to say to us. It's mostly to the characters on the screen, whatever they're talking about. Very little messaging comes across to speak to the viewers, as there should be. So I was glad that the story had that in it. As you know, I'm not like a real fan of the new look that they give to the Enterprise, or the sets around it. It doesn't look much like the canon design that we see in the TOS. If I had made the sets, I would have used gunmetal gray for the interior of the bridge, not all this black that they got in there. I mean, which seems to be the standard for any bridge set now on Star Trek, is it's got to be laminated in black. So, you know, that way it makes the lights show up better. But, you know, that's not really necessary. You don't have to coat the whole interior of a set in black to make the lights look good. They look just fine with just a little bit of black and the lights on that, you know, and the rest can be gray or white, you know. It works just that way, you know. I mean, you look at the movies for Star Treks 1 through 6, I mean, you could see that they, you know, they didn't have to emphasize black on the bridge. Okay, they may have subdued the lighting a lot in some movies where it wasn't necessary, but they didn't paint the whole set black. So yeah, I don't like that. It just looks tacky, and it looks overly somber. Okay, and you know, you would figure for a Star Trek series that's supposed to be a little more like the style that we're all aware of, you know, and you think they would brighten it up a little bit, you know, and kind of give it a more cheery look, you know, instead. But you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll change it. At least they went back to the kind of colors and stuff of the uniforms that they used on the TV show. You know, they didn't overly how can I say it? They didn't overly stylize it, you know, like they did with Discovery's uniforms and stuff. They, you know, they made them, you know, just enough. Chapel's outfit, I thought kind of looked more closer to the motion picture style. So I'm not sure whether I like the white bodysuit. Because I remember the kind of suits that they had that were like unitard were like, they looked like, you know, they were kind of open with the black shirt underneath, and it was either red or blue or something. You know, they could have made a design like that, but the white jumpsuit seemed more in line with, you know, the movie era Star Trek, which is, you know, much, you know, years and years after. So I don't know. It seemed like she was the only one that had that outfit, and it was like, why is Chapel the only one wearing this? You know, and it doesn't seem to go with anybody else's, you know. So it just seemed a little bit out there, you know. So maybe they should have just, you know, went back to her regular blue shirt and, you know, whatever. I mean, actually the women had skirts and stuff, if I remember. So anyway, I liked how, you know, where they kind of show us Pike's home in Montana, and it looked like a typical Maine day there in the winter, you know, with 50 feet of snow. And he's sitting there watching one of my favorite classic movies, you know. So I liked that he's like, you know, or I like the reference, because that kind of was like a foreshadowing of what was going to come up later in that story. So the story was well written, okay, and I thought, yeah, that was, you know, I kind of figured that was what the story was going to kind of have in it, was that moment in that movie, the day the Earth stood still, where they would have Pike say something to some people on another world somewhere, and that's what happened, because that was foreshadowing, which is a lot what they do in books and stuff like that. When you read books, they put a little bit of foreshadowing in the story, that kind of, when you get towards the end, you'll see it, and you'll think back to the beginning, like, oh, that was a setup for this. So, you know, I was really surprised that they went and did that, you know, because none of the other Star Treks, as far as I know, had anything like that in there, where they were, you know, they had anything foreshadowing anything in the story, and I figured that was because they had no idea how the story was going to end, from, you know, because you got 10 parts in the story that they were making, and I think with all the different writers, nobody really knew how it was going to end. And to me, that's a problem, because if you can't anchor a show on both ends, you know, the story-wise, you're going to be flying all over the place, and it's not going to make any sense when you come to the end. You're going to have plot holes and all kinds of stuff. So it's a very tidy thing to do when you know how the story is supposed to end, and then as you start it, everything will just flow right towards the ending of it. So that way you know that you're not leaving anything left out, and the story is concise. And so yes, this pilot episode I feel is probably one of the better pilot episodes that I've seen from Star Trek. I'm trying to think of the other pilot episodes. Let's see. I would say, yeah, it's up there with the better ones. As a pilot episode. Usually the pilot episodes aren't always that great, but this one I liked. This pilot episode I liked. And I'm glad they didn't give too much away about the story, because I think it would have spoiled it for me if I would have sat there and watched and knew how it was going to end. I would have been expecting things, but in this I didn't expect a lot what was going on, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm glad this is, that they're going this way. However, when I saw what they were showing was to come, I was a little bit, because it seems to me like there's going to be a tremendous amount of action coming in episodes to come. And I'm hoping that this isn't going to be just action all the time, people running through corridors and stuff like that through every episode. I'm hoping that they're going to that these are just, bits and pieces of things that might happen, but that's not going to be the focus of every episode, is battles and stuff like that. I'm hoping that there's going to be a little more philosophical mission things happening, and more messaging kind of stories in there, stories that have some meaning to the viewer and to character development, and not so much about phasers and torpedoes and all that other stuff that is cool, but shouldn't always be the focus of every story. Trying to think here with I realized they had put a lot of moments in this pilot episode of Christopher Pike dealing with the fact that he knows how he's going to end up in the future. And he's trying to grapple with that, dealing with how that's going to be. I think that's a good way of showing how the series could end. But I think how this should be handled is that towards the end, when Pike comes to the moment, he's going to be basically resigned to doing what he knows is going to make him end up in a chair, because that's who he is, and he's just gonna come to the realization that he's a man that the service, and that means he protects life, and that means sometimes you got to sacrifice your own to save others. And he'll come to that moment and realize that, hey, this was inevitable. Every mission I went on, I could have ended up crippled or whatever, or dead even. And you test your luck all the time, and eventually your luck runs out, and maybe that's how he'll come to the understanding that, fretting over what's going to happen to him really shouldn't be a much shock. Knowing about it was probably the worst thing, because like he said, he's worried about being overcautious or not cautious enough, and making this happen. Instead, he should just act the way he would act, in any situation, and not second guess himself. So he'll have that struggle all the time. But I think it's important to see him come to terms with that outcome, and not the writers trying to make the character avoid it, because that's going to be a big canon explosion there, okay? And B, it doesn't give Pike the character development that he's going to need at the end, to show that he did what he was trained to do. That's his job as captain of it, in Starfleet, is to do that. And so I think that that's going to be an important thing for Captain Pike in the show, to finally get it straight in his mind that this is something that can happen to a lot of officers in times of crisis, and if you don't act because you're afraid to act, then you're going to not be the person you're supposed to be. So to have a man resign to the fact that he's going to die, and this or not die, but basically be crippled, horribly crippled, and stuff, and try to come to terms with that before it happens, that's going to be an interesting thing for the writers to try and inject into this character as time goes on. So I know a lot of Star Trek fans on the internet were saying, oh, well, maybe they'll change it where he doesn't get hurt. I'm thinking, you can't do that. It's already set in stone that that's what happens to Pike, but we also know what happens to Pike after that, okay, where he goes back to the Talosian homeworld and he lives out his life with Vina, okay, and with the illusion that he's not hurt anymore. So we know it ends up with a happier ending for him, that's not the way it ends, okay? You know what I'm saying? That him being like that for the rest of his life, that's not what's going to happen. He's going to, through the help of Spock, go back to Talos 4 and live his life there, which is, basically, a merciful way, of giving Pike something back that he thought he had lost, So, people need to, don't get betrayed by, what's going on with the show. I mean, I know right now, okay, I'm just going to say this flat out. I know the women are all hot over this actor here, Anson Mount, okay? I know you guys are. I can tell by all the tweets you put out on Twitter, all the interest about this guy. You guys are burning with him, okay? But there's a difference between Anson Mount and Christopher Pike. They're not the same thing. It's just an actor playing a role, okay? So don't get all upset if they don't change the story and he ends up getting crushed in the end, okay? When you guys were watching Titanic and you saw what happened to, what's his name, there on the boat, go down, you cried and cried and cried. Well, but wasn't that what made the movie so good, was the fact that he came to his end, and you guys, and and it was it's a tragic story, an ending. I mean, come on. Sometimes, a bitter ending is what sells a story. Okay, but when your head, if you've been watching Star Trek all along, you know what happens to Pike eventually, okay? And he does come back, okay? He's not dead. He doesn't die from what happened to him, okay? He comes back, and Spock helps him to get his humanity back. Because like Pike said in the show, there's being alive and then there's living, okay? Well, he doesn't die, but he thinks he's not going to be able to live anymore, and then Spock shows him that he can. He goes to Talos 4, and now he can live his life, So it's a tragic ending that gets snatched away from, from this character that ends up getting a better ending thanks to Spock. So, that's the way it goes. In the meantime, we can enjoy this series for what it's going to give us as Star Trek fans, because we'll be watching some genuine Star Trek. I'm hoping, like I said, the rest of the shows are going to be much the same as the pilot. So, yes, I give this pilot a thumbs up. I think this is a good beginning, a good first step here. I'm hoping the next steps will be good. I know some episodes probably won't be. I mean, just every Star Trek TV show has episodes that were good and some weren't so good. Okay, we all have them. So I'm not going to expect, home runs in every episode. I'm going to be hoping that they'll have more home runs and fewer gaffes as it goes on. There was a lot of episodes in season 1 Star Trek TOS, and season 1 TNG, and DS9, and any of them. There are some episodes that were really great episodes in any of those first seasons, okay? There were a lot of episodes that weren't, but you know, the shows got better as time went on. So I'm hoping that, you know, Strange New Worlds will follow the same pattern. That, you know, the first season will be okay, second one will be better, third one even greater. You know, once these writers and the characters start to coalesce here, they'll know how to make these things work. Okay, to make this more of a family kind of thing than it is just a bunch of random characters coming together for shows. And at the end of this thing, these group of characters here will kind of come together, you know, the way the characters in TNG did, you know, or something. You know, you'll see that happening. So I'm hoping that's the way it'll go, and so I'm keeping my fingers crossed here, keeping them crossed that this continues. So anyway, let's have a commercial break, and we'll come back and I'll talk about season 2 Picard final episode.
Cinnamon gum freshens breath longer than Big Red.
So kiss a little longer, stay close a little longer, hold tight a little longer, longer with Big Red. That Big Red freshness lasts right through it. Your fresh breath goes on and on. While you chew it, say goodbye a little longer, make it last a little longer. Give your breath long-lasting freshness with Big Red.
Want to build a super day? Then start with the one great taste that makes a super bowl of cereal. Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Just think of crispy golden flakes.
Delicious, crunchy flakes of corn.
So pure and simple, just can't wait.
Low in sugar, loaded with vitamins and iron.
So good for you, don't hesitate.
For a super bowl of our most nutritious corn flakes ever.
What a super bowl. Have yourself a super bowl. Kellogg's Corn Flakes. Super taste, super good. Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it. It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Okay, so the final episode of Picard. Now, I know I said before in the previous video here on Trekker Critique that I couldn't see how they could wrap this season up in just the last 2 episodes, okay? And they did, you know, pretty much what I was expecting and hoping they wouldn't do, and that was kind of rush this to an end, okay? And that's kind of what they did. I felt like, you know, every scene was supposed to be an ending to a B story that was, you know, and I'm like, okay. And so a lot of this was needlessly ended quickly, and had really no emotion behind it, okay? And one of the things was Rios staying. Okay, I kind of saw that happening, so that really didn't surprise me that he came out and said, I'm staying, okay? And I was figuring, well, if he stays, that's going to kind of contradict the future they left, right? I mean, because he's not going to be on a ship, and how is that going to play out, okay? So I was like, well, see, this is just another indication that the future they go back to is not the same one they left, okay? So this is a different reality. Whether you want to get on the bandwagon to that theory, I don't know. I mean, that's what's been floating around in discussion groups of science fiction for the last few years now. This multiverse timeline kind of thing, which was really rooted in Back to the Future and stuff, but, you know, over time people have kind of, you know, built on it. That you know, once you leave the present and go in the past, that present you left you can never get back to again. So by leaving Rios behind, the future they went back to is not the same future they left from. So it's an alternate reality, basically, okay? But the Queen herself, when that season started, was not of that reality either. I mean, they found her when they went back in time, thanks to Q, and they ended up in the Confederate Earth, whatever the hell you want to call it, and they had a queen there. Now she is the queen in that timeline that Q sort of created, I guess, by changing things in the past. But the interesting part is that no matter what timeline the Borg happen to be in, the Queen is aware of all the other timelines and aware of all the they have a connection to each other. All the queens are all connected throughout the time multiverse, so they all have the same knowledge about everything, okay? And so this queen obviously knows Picard as Locutus and Seven of Nine and all that. She has the accumulation knowledge of infinite multiverses, if you want to call it. So she knows. But it's not the same queen that we dealt with on Voyager or in First Contact. Okay, this is a whole different queen from a different reality. But because they snatched her from that reality and went into the past with her, okay, she basically can come back into the future, as it were, and, you know, exist in the future. So basically they brought the Borg back into the future where the Borg were pretty much gone, you know, from what happened on Voyager, I guess. Which I never bought anyway. I figured, you know, there's no way, I mean, you can just wipe out all the Borg, you know, with this thing. I mean, some of them must have survived in, you know, in the Delta Quadrant. Not that there was no way they could have wiped out every single Borg just because of one little thing. You know, it's just, I don't know. Because look, if they had that one sphere that wasn't connected to the Borg and managed to get away and chase Voyager down, and somehow come out of the vortex before Voyager, which is, okay, I thought they were chasing Voyager, not Voyager chasing them. You know, that was a little bit confusing there at the end of that last episode. Anyway, if there was one sphere that got away, there must have been other ships and stuff that got away too. So, you know, the Borg couldn't possibly be dead. It was just, you know, just a big part of it was wiped out. But anyway, I digress here. The fact is, they come back into the future, and after the Queen has been changed because what's her face here kind of bonded with her. Now the Borg have a purpose of guarding a hole in space. Okay, whatever that may be. I don't know, but that's what they're doing now in this squid-like Borg vessel they got, which is really weird because it's a diversion from, you know, the cubes and the spheres, you know, and the diamond-shaped Borg vessels that we've seen. Instead, we get this more organic-looking Borg ship that really is sort of, you know, odd. Okay, it kind of deviates from the type of thinking the Borg have about building these ships, you know. So yeah, it's a very different kind of looking thing, and the thing about Picard in this season was that they started with the premise that Picard can't love for some reason. He can't connect or bond to women. But we've all watched TNG, okay? And we've seen Picard have, you know, many connections to women throughout the series, okay? You know, there's some women he knew, you know, coming from the past. He'd meet up with him, you know, like in the first season, you know, which the relationship, you know, didn't end well. I mean, because he was a young man going into Starfleet, so I mean, it's a typical reason why that would have failed, you know. And then he meets Vash, you know. We see her and him, and he's got sort of a connection to her, and you know, and he spent you know, so just review TNG, and you're going to see Picard falling in love here many times during the series. So I'm not sure why they thought that Picard had this problem with opening up to women, okay? Because that's never been really an issue, okay? As far as he is, he's just very particular, you know, about the kinds of women he likes. I mean, it's just, you know, he also doesn't like other people to see him in those situations. I think that was the thing, is that it's okay when nobody's around, then he can let his guard down, but if other people are around seeing him, he's just like, no, you know. So it's, you know, it's more of a military uniform code kind of thing that every person, even in today's world, that's in the service tries to tiptoe around, is not to fraternize or try to, you know, when you're in uniform, to kind of keep it down, you know, basically. And of course, we've seen Picard, you know, had a fling with a scientist or on the ship, which, you know, turned out to be one of the reasons why he really, as a captain, can't really fraternize with people on a ship, is because it breaks down the chain of command, the authority that's there. I mean, as you could see, the one person that he really cared about was put herself in danger, and he realized that he couldn't have that vulnerability as a captain. He'd have to be able to make the decisions that he makes, and not, you know, have any emotional ties that could hurt him and keep him from doing his duty. Okay, so that's as a guy that's dealt with this, but it's had nothing to do about his childhood. Okay, there was nothing about it that had anything to do with that, and there was no mention at all about, you know. And I would think Counselor Troi, after all these years, would have finally got to the truth of this thing that supposedly Picard's been sitting on. I would think that she would be the one that would have got that out of him. Okay, not Q. Okay, you know, if there was anything there, it would be in his psychological profile. They would have known about this, that his mother had hung herself, for Christ's sake, in a damn room. Okay, how can you hide that from the service? That, oh, your mother hung herself, she committed suicide. You know, you can't hide something like that from your, you know, unless Jean-Luc and his brother and father somehow managed to hide the fact that their mother committed suicide, which would be a very hard thing to do, because when you hang yourself, you know, it's a very weird thing that they did with this character. It made Picard darker, you know, and it just felt like, you know, so now you're telling us that all this time Picard was a broken man, and, you know, he went through all of these terrible things as captain of the Enterprise, and, you know, this never would have come out. You know, I'm saying, what I'm talking about is continuity. Okay, they broke the continuity of the character of Picard with this series, with this season here, by giving him a darker background to the kind of person he is, which doesn't fit with the established norms that we know that Jean-Luc Picard is. Okay, they put this stuff in there, okay, and just to make the story more dramatic, I guess, in some way, because I guess they figured Picard wasn't dramatic enough for them. You know, in the first season they turn him into a robot. The second season they tear him down into a broken man. I mean, what are they going to do in season 3? You know, I feel like the people who are writing about this character really don't know what to do with Picard as a character. Instead, they just want to toy around with this character and make him into things that he's not. All right, and I feel like, you know, this is really a troublesome thing about this series here they're doing with Picard, is that, you know, they're breaking him down back to the basics of what he is, and it's not who he is. Okay, and episodes have been made in Star Trek TNG that already kind of explain something of what he is. Okay, and that, you know, there's really no reason at all why this story needed to have that part in there for Jean-Luc. And the thing with Q and Jean-Luc, this was the Tapestry story all over again. Okay, that's what this was, and I said this before, that this reflects so much of that episode. It's like they almost copied it, and I didn't like that. Okay, it's like, you know, they're trying to make this seem like, well, we've never done this before. Of course we have. Okay, Q has already done something like this with Jean-Luc before. Okay, and he comes back for some reason because he's going to die, and he figures he wants to do something for Jean-Luc again. Well, that doesn't seem right, because when we see Q, when he first brings him back into the altered past, okay, he's acting really angry, and he's you know, lording over Picard, and it's like something more than just his death is the cause of it. It just feels like there's something else going on. His emotion isn't matching the narrative of what is to come. Okay, and he takes him further into the past to deal with something that really is very unlike, has nothing to do with Picard. It's mostly about, you know, Soong, okay, and his past. And Picard is kind of there in this floundering sort of method here in the story, where he's just, it's like they what he's doing doesn't seem to have much connection to what the A story is. Him being there has sort of become a B story towards the end. Okay, his dealing with his past and all this other stuff that's going on. It has absolutely nothing to do with being in the past, or, you know, all this time travel shit that's going on, because Picard is reliving this stuff out in his memory. Okay, he's seeing this stuff in his memory, in his mind. Okay, it has nothing to do with Q. But for some reason, this story seems to think that he has to be in the 21st century to go through this revisiting of his past, to see, you know, how to open up about what happened to his mother and all this stuff. It's like it feels too convoluted, you know, of a way. I mean, I feel like there was more than one person with an idea here, and it just didn't coalesce the way they hoped it would, because the A story and Picard's B story did not connect. Okay, there was no connection here that explains why these two storylines have any relevance at all to the overall story arc here in this season. Okay, it just felt like two separate stories playing parallel to each other, and they had no purpose to be together in the same season. Okay, I'm sorry, but Picard was really not even part of the group that's out there trying to, you know, find the Queen and stop her and all this shit. You know, Picard is nowhere to be found. He's off on his own doing all his own stuff while everybody else is doing the A story thing. he's off on his own, and it's like, you know, why is this series called Picard? Because in this season, Picard is not really the protagonist here in this season. He's sort of the background character in season 2, okay, and everybody else, you know, happens to be pushed into the forefront. Seven, Raffi, Rios, all them, they're all working together for the same kind of a story, the A story part. But Picard, he kind of just splintered off from the group, and he's off on his own with the Watcher, as it, you know, which they never explained why she looked like the Romulan that he knows. I mean, they never even explained that. Okay, but anyway, you know, that she splintered off from that. Okay, and he's off on his own. It's like that's a whole story right there that ought to be separated from this, because that would have probably condensed a lot of this season down, because they've really stuffed the middle. I mean, the beginning of it was really, really interesting, okay, and the end of it was kind of interesting because, you know, but if you could take a lot of the chunks in the middle out, I think the story would have made a little more sense, and it wouldn't have been so long. It wouldn't have felt stuffed. Guinan, the young Guinan being in there wasn't needed. Okay, it wasn't needed at all. That was just nostalgia, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, there was really no purpose in writing her character into this season. Okay, they could have had that. Anybody else, any character could have taken that part or something. If it was even needed in the story, they probably wouldn't have needed it at all. Okay, but it was just an excuse to put Whoopi Goldberg in the show as, you know, nostalgic, and then have her show up on Earth as a younger version of herself, and sort of have this little bit of a, you know, we're going to be friends one day or something like that thing. But overall, there was really no point in having that character in this season at all. Okay, and that's too bad, because, you know, you figure if Whoopi Goldberg was going to be in it, then there must be something significant about her being on the show, and it really wasn't. Okay, they just put her in there just to put her in there, just like what they did with you know, with what's a Hugh there, when they put Hugh in the first season and they kill him off. Okay, and then they put what's his the Borg there, what's his name, I can't even think of it now, Icheb. They put Icheb in there, and then they kill him off. Okay, I felt the same way. They put Whoopi Goldberg in there, and it's like, okay, yep, and goodbye. And it's like there's really nothing needed there. There was nothing, you know, because it just it felt ridiculous. And I felt like, you know, there was opportunities that they missed, I think, in a lot of sense, where they could have had, you know, somebody, you know, from the future. I mean, the guy that they picked that was interrogating Picard, I don't know if you realize this or not, actually was in Voyager years before, and he played he was on that ship, the USS, he was from the future. It was a time ship, from a member of the Federation. It was a Starfleet time ship, and he was the first officer. And him being in Star Trek Picard, I figured that maybe he's there as an agent from the future, and he's there to try to get Picard out of this friggin' paradox that's been created, or something like that. And he's disguised himself as an FBI agent. Instead, no, it's just the same actor, but he's just playing a different character. And it's like, well, that's, you know, what the hell? So it took all the friggin' interest out of that, you know. So I felt like this is ridiculous. You know, it was an opportunity that, you know, where they wouldn't have needed Guinan at all in that scene. They could have had this guy from the future that everybody remembered playing in that role. You know, the Premonition, I think that was the name of the ship, the USS Premonition. They could have had him in this character, which would have been a nice callback to Voyager, because we met this character before. You know, and instead, no, it's just the same actor, different character. Which was like, well, that fizzled that thing out. That would have been an interesting arc to put in the story, you know, sort of a, you know, call to Voyager, kind of bringing that element in there, which would have been nice, you know, because, you know, TNG wasn't just about the Enterprise. It was also about Deep Space Nine. It was also about Voyager. I mean, because those series all existed in the same time period. Okay, so it would have been a nice to bring a little bit of these other shows into this thing too, you know. But no, they didn't do that. So it was like, you know. And like I said, at the end, Q and Picard having that moment where Picard puts the key back in behind the brick, and Q says "Bravo" in the background, that he thought Picard would not put it back. Why wouldn't he think? Why would he think that? If anybody would put the key back, it's going to be Picard, because he's the one that understands the best about how time has to be consistent. Okay, him taking that key out of there, no matter what had happened to him, that would have been wrong. It would have changed the future, and the future wouldn't, you know, that they went back to wouldn't have been anything like that. It would, you know what I'm saying? Because they had a lot of time stories, time travel stories, where setting the time right was always the important thing in the show. Okay, nobody got a chance to cheat time, you know, or anything like that. I mean, everything had to be set right. So if there was anybody that would have understood that best, it would have been Jean-Luc, because of the experience that he had, you know, dealing with time travel paradoxes. Okay, so yes, he put the key back in there. Why Q thought he wouldn't do it, I don't understand. Q doesn't know him as well as we thought. Okay, or maybe that's just a oversight of the writers. Okay, but at the end of the day, this whole thing about Q and Picard together was more about John Delancey and Patrick Stewart acting together again, and this is the excuse that they get to bring them back. Okay, I think this was more of a two actors living out their final roles here together for the last time than it was about the characters that they're playing, which is kind of selfish in a way, because they took their story really did not have a whole lot to do connect-wise with the A story of the entire season. Okay, even though he was the catalyst for them going back in time to see the altered past, or the altered future, the altered future, that this darker Earth ultimately was Picard himself and the crew who took their ship and went back in time even further. Okay, it had nothing to do with Q. Q didn't do that. That was their own doing. Okay, so that basically at that point, that's when the Q element of the story just kind of fizzled out. It's like, well, what the hell are we doing here? You know, why is Q still a part of the story? He changes the present, and you know, they go back in time to figure out, you know, what he changed. But through the whole course of trying to find out what was changed, the point of why he changed it really doesn't seem to gel in the final scene between Picard and Kirk. I mean, Picard and Q. It doesn't seem to really make much sense, and it still doesn't, even as I think about it, it still doesn't make much sense to me why he went to this convoluted way of trying to help Picard do something, you know, that he never did, which is something that he did before, but for some reason he didn't, you know. I don't know, you know, it's what I'm saying. It's a very, very rocky, you know, kind of, you know, murky story that really at the end doesn't really deliver. Okay, I'm sorry, it didn't give us anything. It's just a season filled with moments, you know, that were funny, moments that look good, moments that were, you know, and that's it. It's just about a season of moments. That's all it is, you know. Story-wise, it's very jumbled. It's vague in some spots, convoluted in areas. It's just not. It's not really right. It just doesn't flow like our story should flow. Okay, it feels like some of the damn Star Trek stories that I read when I was in junior high, with some kids used to give me stuff that they wrote for a story, and they wanted me to read it to see if it was any good. It felt like one of their stories, you know, and I felt like, you know, I could sit with that script that they wrote for this season and just pick that fucker apart like you wouldn't believe, and say, this has got to go, this has got to go, this has got to go, okay? And by the time I'm done with that friggin' season, it would have been maybe 3 episodes, and that would have been the whole season wrapped right up. And it would have been fine. It would have worked. A 3-part episode. That's what it would have been. There's no reason on this earth that story should have lasted 10 hours, okay? I'm sorry, but that, you know, and that's what I said about the previous season. Season 1, no, same thing. Too long, too much confusion in it, didn't make any sense, contradictory elements here of the story. Okay, this has got to go, that's got to go, this has got to go, and now you got your story, okay? You know, and that's pretty much how this has been handled here with Star Trek Picard. It's not very good, and I don't expect season 3 to be any better, okay? They tried to give you this cliffhanger kind of ending when they, just before they close out the season here, and the final scene shows a light in the background, which is a ship coming out of warp, I think. And it's like, yeah, it's probably going to be the Enterprise. Okay, they're going to open up season 3 with the Enterprise coming out of warp, and it's going to bring in the other characters of Star Trek TNG that we haven't seen yet. Okay, who knows? We'll see Worf. He's probably the captain of the Enterprise, or, you know, somebody is still the captain, or, you know, and if it ain't the Enterprise, it's probably going to be Riker, and he's on the Titan or some goddamn, you know what I'm saying? It's no mystery, because I'm used to the caliber of writing that they've been doing up to this point, okay? And it seems to me like they're focusing too much on making everything so predictable, and yet when it's not predictable, it doesn't work. Okay, it just, whatever, when they try to surprise you, they actually ruin the story by surprising you with different things, okay? It feels like they're throwing wrenches in the gearbox when they try to surprise you with nostalgia. It's like, you could do without that scene. You could do without that character. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things they just throw in there, and it's just eye candy, or just stuff to confuse the story all the more. So yeah, I'm not really that happy with season 2 Picard, okay? I know some people felt like it ended up good, but I feel like it was a waste of time, that the first hour and the last hour of this of season 2 was really the best 2 hours out of the whole season. The rest of it was like, suck that right out the window. Okay? And it's sad that, you know, they're taking these characters that we grew up with in the 80s, and we admired, and we watched reruns of them, went to all their movies, okay, and they're basically taking these characters and they flushed them down the toilet, essentially. And, you know, I really, you know, I can't say how much that's really, you know, upsetting to me, you know, because these weren't characters that you just treat like this, okay? And if they couldn't come to a better story with this, you know, if this 3-season story, because that's what this is, it's Picard, a Picard story that takes 3 seasons to tell. Since season 1, they've okay, it's gone in ways that you never would even think that it would even be relevant to Picard. This couldn't have been, they shouldn't even have called this Star Trek Picard. It should have been just Star Trek Unknown, or whatever the hell you want to call it, you know, Star Trek Have Fun. You know, you know, it doesn't have anything at all to do with Picard. It's anything but Picard. It's everything. It's not just Picard, it's everything, okay? He just happens to be in the center of chaos in this 3-season story here, and, you know, whenever they can get a chance to inject something of Picard in it, they do. I mean, the rest of it, it just doesn't seem to be much about him at all, you know. So I feel like this was really messed up from the beginning, and they never should have done this, you know. And, you know, it's sad that, you know, if they think that they're gonna save this this saga here in the last season, I'm sorry. It ain't gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Their track record up to this point has been dismal. The only thing so far that I felt good about is Strange New Worlds. As far as I'm concerned, they can take all the other Star Treks they did before that and just flush that down the toilet, and let's just start with that as being you know, the new Star Trek here for Paramount instead. Just forget all the rest of that crap they've been making, and just start with this. You know, I think if they focus all their attention on just this one series here, and stay with that, you know, they might be able to hammer out a decent Star Trek here that hasn't been done in a decade or more. Okay, I'm sorry, but it's just, I feel like that's really where we're at here with this. Don't waste the money to go make a season 3. Well, it's too late. They probably have already canned it. So I'm just saying, Paramount's blew a lot of money here on Star Trek for the last decade. A lot of wasted money that could have been used to feed people that didn't have a home, could have fed, you know, the hungry. You know, it could have been, you know, they could have taken that money and donated that to the war effort in Ukraine. I mean, they could have done any number of things that would have been a whole lot more helpful than making this bastardized Star Trek here that everybody's been calling it. Okay, they could have done a whole lot more, and instead they blew it on that. Okay, now Paramount's gonna have to pay for that, you know, and that's basically it. You know, all these actors here and all that, and all the work that's been done was for nothing. You know, I'm sure Jonathan Frakes would not like to hear what I'm saying about that. Okay, he'd be a great director otherwise, but unfortunately the scripts he's been getting to work with, I don't see how in the hell he ever could try to direct any of that shit. Okay, so if I was Jonathan Frakes, I would just say enough Star Trek. I'm going to go do other things because my name is getting dragged down in the toilet here because people think I can't direct or do anything good here, because the fans have been bitching since day one, okay, about Discovery and Picard and whatever, and they haven't been happy with it. Yeah, some people like it, a lot of people don't. Okay. And you know, Jonathan Frakes' name is going to be attached to a lot of that shit, and I don't think that's good for him, really. I mean, he can direct a whole lot better stuff than that. I know he can, but unfortunately, you know, what he started, he's got to finish, right? So anyway, that's all I got to say about that for now, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the week and has some good weather coming your way. Please comment and subscribe so you'll know when I do another one of these videos here. And I hope to catch you all again another time. So take care, everybody.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We are not sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Because I think that the tradition of an engineer is a Scot. You know, because all the great motor ships and the steamships of the world were built on the Clyde.